Ultra Cafe, where ideas take shape, thoughts find depth, and every conversation explores the art of thinking beyond the obvious. So today I have my special guest, one of his advocacy, the marketing Alfred to your Batman. Get clear, go faster, build a brand you love. No other than Mr. Charlie South.
Hey, great to be with you.
Welcome, welcome, Mr. Charlie. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
No, you covered it very well. I am very much trying to be the Alfred to your Batman. I work with small businesses and solopreneurs and thought leaders, businesses and teams of all sizes who just need some help with maybe getting out of their heads a little bit, getting an objective look at how their brand is doing, some of the messaging that is out there, and how they can launch themselves into what's next. So I've spent the last 15 years as a copywriter, content strategist, and branding enthusiast in a lot of ways. I'm not sure that I would call myself an expert or a guru or anything like that, but I love working with brands who have something unique to tell to the world, and hopefully, I get to help them tell it a little bit more clearly so that they can do more of what they love.
Indeed. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Charlie. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And today let's talk about the gift of curiosity for your brand. So tell us,
Yeah.
let's start with a definition. In a business context, what do you mean by strategic curiosity? And how is it different from just random fact finding?
Well, I think there's a situation that every single person finds themselves in. And I'm sure you've been in this situation before. I don't know anybody that hasn't. I haven't met anybody that hasn't. When you're sitting
Yes.
around a table and you're trying to have a conversation and you get stuck. There's a word that can't come to your mind. You're trying to remember that actor in that movie and you don't remember what either one was called. And your brain just kind of goes into this mode of, I have to know the answer to that, and the most unsatisfying thing that can happen in that moment is for somebody to go, "Oh, that's so and so. I bet you were trying to say this word," or that movie is called blank. And you can see it on people's faces when they just go, "Yeah, that was it." Okay. But when you actually feed that curiosity, as it is, something really amazing happens. You're not just satisfied with knowing the answer, you're satisfied with the discovery of that. Either you remembered it, or maybe in the course of the conversation, it just pops into your mind, or later on, scrolling through Netflix or something like that, you happen to find it. And all of a sudden, something great happens in your brain where you almost get this little reward and thinking, there's an answer, there's something, but it's more about that process of going through it. And so when I talk about strategic curiosity, especially in a business context, there are parameters, there are guardrails around it, but it's not necessarily a from point A to point B. You can't always define it. The thing that I coach business owners and leaders on the most is, if you are giving really fast answers and you are not asking people what they think or considering other possibilities or letting some of that doubt maybe creep in for half a second, then you're missing an important step in all of this. You're missing the curiosity piece. There's a great quote by Albert Einstein. I collect quotes. I have a whole book of them from speakers that I've heard, classes that I've attended, whatever it is. But one of my favorites is from Albert Einstein, where he says, "I have no special talent. I am only passionately curious." And I think if a lot of brands and leaders did that, if they approach their business or their brand with an air of curiosity, so to speak, it would open up a ton of possibilities for them. Um, there was another guy named Sven Schneiders who said the worst decision most adults make is to stop asking questions, trading their curiosity for the appearance of competence. And in this world that we live in, we're so desperate to have the answer, prove that we know this, show our resumes as it is. And sometimes we just forget to stop and have that childlike wonder again. So that's what I try to bring to brands, and especially in their marketing and branding efforts, to open that back up and say, what could be? What have we not considered yet? And how could we go from here to there in a way that's unexpected?
What could be, for sure. And be curious always, people. Who knows you will be the next Einstein.
Very true.
Mr. Charlie, why is it curiosity a particularly potent competitive advantage in today's fast paced market, especially when
Mhm.
compared to more traditional strength like capital or legacy?
It's a great question. I think we have put so much trust in data, and I think data is great. In fact, when I go look at a brand for the first time, those are some of the first things that I will look at. I will look at their numbers. Sometimes that is sales, sometimes that's how many people on their team, but more often it's those traditional marketing numbers. What's the traffic to your site? What are the conversion rates? How is this ad performing? Data is still very important, but I think that we have made data the most important thing instead of an important thing. And when we do that, we just become very black and white, very rigid, very it has to fit in this, and that's what guides our decisions. But there's two or three other things I would say that are just as important, maybe even more important than the data. One of them is the doubt that you have, because sometimes you could read the data and think, I'm not really sure that that's the right move for us. Maybe that feels off brand. Maybe we haven't, maybe we've tried that before and it hasn't worked. Sometimes we have to entertain those doubts, and doubts are not a bad thing, especially when it comes to brands. It's actually a good thing. It could save you from making $1 million mistake. It could also open up other possibilities. I would say the other thing is when we are too quick to answer, and we're unwilling to stop and pause and think for a moment and really process the question. That's a form of curiosity. That's one of the things that's going to propel you and your team and your brand forward. That's one of the ways that you can feed it. Inviting other people's perspectives and ideas in there. These are just the things that leaders, I think they inherently know, but we just forget over time for the sake of expediency, for the sake of creativity, for the sake of being clever, or for the sake of the goals and what we're trying to, have stakeholders approve of. All of those things. I think that's why it's so important, and that's why I always start with that. Once we get through some of the, what are we trying to accomplish? What are the goals, et cetera? We say, all right, we've got to just put as much on the whiteboard as we possibly can, and then start to funnel it down and whittle it down from there.
Interesting indeed, Mr. Charlie. Many brands are built on a foundation of authority and answers. Why is cultivating a mindset is a question ultimately more powerful and resilient?
I think some of the best brands, the most authoritative brands, are curious. They ask those questions, they step into that space and they say, what could be? You think about all of the biggest brands, if you wanted to go down Coca-Cola or Apple, all of these great brands that have not only R&D, but they spend millions and millions of dollars on advertising and such. What you see in the final products is representative of so much behind the scenes. And I think as small business owners, or even as leaders of smaller teams, we can get stifled and think, well, because I don't have that, we have to do something else. We have to prove ourselves in the marketplace, or we have to make decisions that are a little bit more narrow than we typically would. And over time, if you don't invite curiosity, if you don't invite other perspectives and all of the questions from every angle of the diamond, so to speak, then I think you're going to miss your opportunity to become more authoritative in your space. Because if you're thinking about it, chances are your competitor is thinking about it too. And there are times too where if you're thinking about it and your competitor isn't, you could be the first to the market, or you could have a competitive advantage in there. But again, if you don't slow down, if you don't take time to think about it, then it's going to be a missed opportunity no matter what.
Miss opportunity. We don't like that for
No, not at
sure.
all.
So, how can a leader practically measure the ROI of curiosity, is it in innovation, employee retention, customer loyalty, or something less tangible?
I think it's all of those things. I don't know that there's a specific number that you could give something abstract and ethereal like curiosity, but I think that the more you do it, the more you'll see it pay off. I think the more time that you spend asking questions, whiteboarding for yourself, journaling works for some people. It doesn't work for me. I don't advocate for journaling because it doesn't necessarily work for me. I find that when I'm as an external processor, when I have those conversations with multiple people, it still helps to shape the same types of ideas, than if I were just try to force myself for 20 minutes to write it down. Small tangent there. Um, but I think that the ROI that you're going to see trickle down is increased morale when team members feel like they are included in the discussion, when they're included in the development of ideas and products and services. I think they're going to feel valued and appreciated. The more that they are asked, the more likely they are to give their opinion. Secondarily, I think it also creates a culture of curiosity. I think if you show as a leader that you are willing to be curious, your team members, your employees will also be curious and they will bring better ideas to the table because they know it's safe. It's okay for me to bring new ideas, crazy ideas. Now, that's not to say that we have to entertain all crazy ideas. It's not to say that we have to entertain everyone's perspective, but people don't necessarily uh, want to have everything approved. They do want to be heard. So I think that's another really important component of this is when you as a leader are curious, you're going to see that trickle down to your team. I think it also makes an impression on the people above you too. When you're not just willing to put out the same report, the same standard numbers, the same this and that every single week or month or quarter or year. When you're willing to come to the table and present something crazy, again, even if the answer is no, show them that you're thinking outside the box and show them that you want to move things forward.
What does a curious culture actually look like in a day to day basis? Can you give an example of a ritual or practice that foster it, Mr. Charlie?
I can give you the opposite first. I think all of us have worked in those contexts where the agenda is so rigid, or we have to get through this, or we have a very small box that we have to fit everything in a perfect little 15, 20, 30-minute window, sometimes an hour if we're lucky, who knows. But I think all of us have been beholden to that at one point, and there's nothing that kills creativity more than routine. That's not to say you can't have creativity within routine, but the more you do it and the more mundane it becomes, the less likely you are to get the kind of momentum that you want to out of it. So, when I think about how to bring a culture of curiosity, one of the first things I think of is to just have a meeting where nothing is planned, where you say, we know what our goals are. We know that every voice in this room matters because it represents potentially every discipline or every perspective that we could bring. So, what are we not thinking of? What are some of the possibilities? What are all of the things that we've tried before that maybe we should revisit? I know a coworker that I had at a previous job. She tried to get an initiative through approvals for 2 years and was, I mean, very humbly, very content to sit on it and wait for the right time. And eventually, when it was the right time, it wound up being one of the most successful initiatives that had ever been done. But that has to start with the leader. It has to start with somebody leading the charge. And if you have a safe culture as a follower or as an employee, if you can go to your leader and say, "We haven't done this in a while. We really haven't taken the time to just dream together or to think about how we could accomplish our mission differently together." I'd encourage them to go do that too. Hopefully, there is a strong, healthy culture like that where they can step into that space and be vulnerable and say, we can do something different and it could be better, but we won't know if it's better until we actually ask the questions.
What's the role of leadership in modeling curiosity, and how can a CEO or manager demonstrate they don't have all these answers without seem weak or unprepared?
If every meeting feels like a report or that information is being passed down, I think that's how you know very quickly you do not have a very creative leader. If leadership is going into a room and coming up with all of these ideas, irrespective of the people who might actually be making it happen, I think that is showing a lack of curiosity and a lack of creativity. Now, I don't want that to be an indictment on every single leader out there because I believe that everybody is a creative in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Yes, even the accountants and the financiers, they can be creative too. But I think that over time, you start to see the fruit of that. If people are unwilling to bring their ideas to the table, then I think you know you have a culture of information sharing, not a culture of curiosity. Versus if a leader is willing to step into that space again and say, what are we not thinking about? What are we not considering? Or to even open it like this. I learned this on one of my first days at a very, very large company. One person who was going into the CEO's office on a regular basis, he was making a presentation, but he set the stage by saying, I want everybody to know this is a conversation. This is not me saying this is what we should do, and this is not me asking for approval. This is us saying, as a team, these are the ideas that we have come up with. This is a direction that we think we could go in. Now help us fill in the last 20%, and then we can go after it together. That gets you buy-in, number one. That gets you a lot of runway to then go and make it happen. Number two, because it's no longer deadline driven necessarily, it's initiative driven. And number three, I think it builds rapport and relationship way more than just saying, here are the facts. What do you think?
How can brands move beyond standard market research and use genuine curiosity to uncover the unspoken needs and desire of these customers?
I think there's two parts to that. Number one, I think it's having the right kind of vision, and number two, I think it starts with knowing who your customer is. So I'll start with that second one first because I think this is where, again, brands can either get stuck or they can forget a lot of times. In our culture of social media and trying to keep up, a lot of times we look for what is trending, what is working, what should we be copying, or what is our competitor doing versus who is our customer. And the more that we know our customer, the more we know what kind of experience to give them and what channels we should be in. I have a client right now that I think said one of the most profound things I've ever heard a client say. As we were meeting to kick off a couple of projects, they looked at me and they said, we know the kind of in store experience that we provide for our customers. We have to duplicate that in a digital format because that's what we want to be true about who we are. We don't want to just increase sales for the sake of increasing sales. We don't want to do social media for the sake of doing social media. We always want it to be representative of us knowing our customers so well that what they see online and what they experience is the same thing that they would get if they were face to face with us. That starts with knowing your customer. You can't have that mindset if you don't know who you're talking to and who you're going after. I think that's number one, or that's actually number two, rather. Um, and I think the first one matters as well. There's, I'm trying to think of the right metaphor for it. When I think about the competitive landscape today, right? When I think about what every brand is trying to accomplish, I think that's where it starts and ends. By trying to differentiate yourself, you may be stifling yourself. But at the same time, if you're not looking at what makes you unique and staying in that lane, then you might wind up doing more things that don't matter, doing more things that don't ROI. And if that's the case, then you're just going to spin your tires even more, waste time, waste money, have the wrong people in the wrong seat on the bus, and it could get really ugly really quickly.
Mr. Charlie, what is the most powerful open ended question a brand can ask its customers to spark meaningful insight and deepen the relationship?
I worked with a nonprofit leader. He's a consultant for executives now, and he has always said, "I believe one of the most powerful questions." And so, most of the questions, I like to be an aggregator of a lot of these insights and questions and quotes. And so, I just kind of collect them over time. And when somebody says, "Oh, that's a really good question," I'm like, "Thanks, I stole it from so and so." I mean, that's great artists, do that. They steal until they can't. But he opened a question. As he was working with nonprofits, he would say the question that we should not be asking is what kind of impact are we making with these dollars. The question that we should be asking is what is it like to be on the receiving end of our mission? And I think if brand leaders and owners would do the same thing, what is it like to be one of our customers? What is it like to walk through our doors? What is it like to get a phone call, read an email, see a social post from our brand? And if I did this for myself last year, where the handful of clients that I was working with, I went to them and I asked some of those open ended questions. I said, describe what it is like to work with me. Describe what I do for you. Describe the kind of value that I provide to you. And I'll be honest, I shifted a ton of things that I did because what I thought I was doing is not what I was actually doing. And what I said I would do for them, I was still doing a portion of that, but it was a very small portion. It actually expanded out from there in ways that I never would have thought possible. And so I spent a lot of time in customer research at a very, very big company here in the South, and I did a lot of interviews. I listened to a lot of feedback, and I was trying to get it pretty fast, as fast as I could to make great decisions. But I also pulled out quotes and said, "Hey, if we ignore this one, it could come back to bite us. If we're not regularly listening to our customers and the words they're using, that's the gold mine right there. If you want to find out what the problems are in your brand, go talk to your customer success team, customer service, sales. Like they can tell you what the top 5 questions are about your product or your service. They can tell you where the confusion is. They can tell you where you might be missing the mark in some places." But again, it just starts with staying open and having that mentality of not assuming that we know because we're making sales or because we're doing X, Y, and Z, we're having an impact, but actually asking the people who are on the receiving end, what's it like to experience our brand?
Can you share an example of a brand that used a curious beginner's mind's approach to completely reinvent a stagnant product category?
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of them out there. I think some of the brands that we admire the most are the ones that are on the cutting edge of that. They give us some of the things that we didn't know we needed, or they're presenting it in a way that is very unique. I think for other brands, they have to rediscover that. I think for other brands, it's vastly important that they not go back to square one necessarily, but they have a square one mentality of saying, how do we relaunch ourselves? How do we re-engage with our customers in a new way? So another small business that I've been working with recently, we've spent a lot of time refining some of their messaging and how they present themselves online in an e-commerce perspective. And as we've just launched their website again, it's we're not introducing them to something they didn't already know. It is a new experience. It has a totally different look, tone, and feel, and functionally, it looks a whole lot better and operates a whole lot better than the old website. But we spent a lot of time thinking through the navigation. If somebody was in the store, how would we organize it by these sections that they would see when they come in the store? We don't want somebody to assume it's going to be on the front rack and then have to go all the way to the back corner. Those are the kind of questions that really help a brand win. Is when you can put yourself again in the shoes of your customer. But sometimes it's not about creating the new thing. Sometimes it's about getting very, very clear on the current thing and presenting it in the right way.
Mr. Charlie, what is the single biggest institutional barrier to curiosity in most organizations?
Oh, believe it or not, I think it's time. I think so many businesses are beholden to deadlines, or they think we have to accomplish this by a certain point, that everything else just takes a back seat. And so when you get into some of those operationalized or systematized solutions, that's when it can just become like rowing a boat that is sinking very, very slowly. You think you're making progress, but in reality it's just kind of going down. um, I think I've had plenty of conversations with project managers and people who are all about systems and all about processes, and I love that there are people who do that. My brain doesn't work that way. In fact, I often found ways to operate outside of those systems for the sake of creativity and progress in some ways. But it was a great exercise for me to go through to think strategically and systematically, so that when it came time to explain it, I had a great way to do that. I think most businesses, most brands, most organizations, especially at scale, can sometimes forget what got us here. There's some research that's been done in the past about startups and what happens when a business has nothing and grows to something huge, and what do they learn along the way versus what happens when a business starts and they have an influx of cash and then they fizzle out in a year or two. Well, they didn't have to be creative, they didn't have to solve the same kinds of problems. I think the same is true at scale. When you have more things, more people, more systems, more processes in place, they don't have time for creativity anymore. They have time for the thing that is going to move the needle and the thing that is going to ROI the fastest, instead of stopping and thinking and taking time to get really clear on what we're going to do next. One of the examples that I learned about in college, 15, 20 years ago, was 3M. 3M would give their employees time for R&D. The Post-it note came from one of those times. Somebody came up with that idea. 99.9% of those ideas may never see the light of day, but it did something, I bet, for the culture more than it did anything else. It provided them an outlet to be curious, and to explore possibilities they would never have done otherwise had it not been on company time and sanctioned company time at that.
Mr. Charlie, in the age of AI and data analytics, where we have
Mhm.
more answer at our fingertips than ever, why is it human capacity to ask the right questions becoming more critical?
Oh, I think that's a great question. The more that I've played with AI, I won't say the smarter it gets, because I think it's only as good as the user, and I'm not sure I'm the right person to move AI into the future. But I think you're exactly right. The times that I've been most frustrated, it's the same with any other kind of tool. Either I didn't know how to use it correctly, or I was using it for something that it wasn't supposed to be used for. And anytime I've prompted any kind of AI or anything, and it always comes up short. Nothing is perfect. You're still going to have to tweak it and take it and make it your own, and all of that. I think it can be incredibly valuable. I talk to solopreneurs all the time who are like, "Oh yeah, I used." This AI for this. And I'll go, great. I'm glad that you found something that could help you. I'm glad that you found something that could act as a thinking partner, or an idea generator, or just an affirmation of what you're doing. Sometimes it's great for deep research when you don't have the time to do it. Not without its flaws, of course, but I think it's becoming very valuable in the day. I haven't done the proper research to see, like, how often are we going to ChatGPT and Claude and some of these others over Google, but I would imagine it's taken a pretty significant chunk out, even as Google and Microsoft have rolled out Copilot and Gemini. I would imagine that a large chunk is not going to the AI uh, apps or plugins necessarily. I think that they're still making pretty significant waves in search queries and the ability to bring people answers and perspectives. I'll say one of the most fascinating things that I have found is, when I'll prompt it to take on a certain persona, or have a certain maybe a certain lens to it, is probably the right way to say it. Where I'll say, "Hey, I need you to poke holes in this thing. I think I have it figured out, but I have no idea whatsoever." And maybe it's just because I keep saying please and thank you to it, but sometimes it'll be like, "Hey, I think you're doing a pretty good job. Here are the 10 things that you missed." I think it's really valuable. It's obviously not going anywhere, but it can be a tremendous help to a lot of brands.
Mr. Charlie, for a skeptical leader who says, we don't have time for curiosity, we have a business to run, what is your most compelling counter argument?
Oh, um, I would ask that leader if it's safe. Like, do you want to grow this business? Do you want to grow this brand? because what got us here is not going to get us to the next place we want to go. And again, respectfully, if if possible, and always with candor and thoughtfulness. But I mean, challenging leaders to say, like, if this isn't a place where we can be innovative, if this isn't a place where we can think forward, then what are we really doing here? We're just serving the bottom line. We're just serving the CEO's ideas. We're just trying to keep the status quo and business as usual. As a creative, that would be immensely frustrating to me. I couldn't imagine being in that kind of environment and trying to thrive. It sounds like torture, actually. um, but finding ways to do that in a healthy and productive way. Maybe you have to do that in your spare time. Sometimes it's on your lunch break or while you have some downtime. Doing some searches and writing down some ideas, digging into the data, figuring out what kind of gaps already exist. The way you can make yourself really valuable is to bring up problems and say, I think we can solve this. Not to say, like, this is the mountain that is in front of us and we have no idea how we're going to climb it. Making yourself very valuable, I think, lends itself to giving you more permission and more runway to be curious in new and inventive ways.
Mr. Charlie, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well, geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast law 101 and mental health 101 love letters in third season, and movie 101 review, music 101 in fourth season, and science 101 and sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Charlie, tell us finally, if curiosity is a gift to your brand, what is the ultimate gift that Curious Brand gives back to its customers and the world?
Curiosity always leads to clarity. When you start to get curious, when you start to ask the right questions and entertain those doubts, look at the data, wonder about what could be, it always leads to clarity. Not immediately necessarily, but it always lends itself to saying, well, now that we've considered every possibility, or now that we've considered enough of the possibilities, we can make informed decisions. We can move in a direction that is going to provide us with momentum. It's going to align everybody around the mission. It's going to get us to where we want to go. And that's the beauty of it. Is most people think clarity is just about providing answers, but if you don't start with the what ifs and the what could be's, and you don't provide context, then you're going to miss a whole lot of perspectives. You're going to miss a whole lot of possibilities, and inevitably you're going to miss opportunities and lose money, which nobody wants to do. So that's my encouragement to small business owners and leaders and teams, marketers, creatives, anybody. I think everybody should be more curious, but specifically in the business world, being curious always lends itself to your brand getting stronger and more clear, and inevitably growing to the place where you want it to go.
Mr. Charlie Sells, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So can you
Well, thank you for
please,
having me.
yes, so can you please invite our listeners to support your business, your advocacy, or any projects that you're doing right now?
Sure. Easiest way to do it is to go to clarityovereverything.com. Explains a little bit more about what I do, some of the services that I offer, and it's also really easy to get in contact with me. All of us live in email land and contact land, but I'd love to connect with you. And if you need a thinking partner, if you need somebody to give you better data, or if you want to go all out and do a brand sprint, I'm your guy. I'm the Alfred to your bet.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Charlie Sells because if you support him for sure more and more empowering business will rise. So, Mr. Charlie, thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you for having me, Daniel.
Monica, people, see you soon.